Hey guys, welcome back or welcome to my channel. And today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a realistic Tiger Therian mask. For the base, you'll be needing a cat mask base, hot glue sticks, scissors, EVA film or cardboard, something to line the mask inside with, and elastic. First, cut the ears off. It should look like this. Then put 2 pieces of 2mm EVA film underneath of it to fill the gap. I used to trace it and cut to size, but it takes way too long, so this method is easier. Then just cut off the extra film. Here's how it should look. Next, get another piece of 2mm EVA film and trace the shape of the base's eyes onto it. After that, trace the shape of the eye you want the mask to have. Then just cut it out and glue it on. Do the same thing with the other eye. Here's how it should look. Next, glue a piece of 6mm EVA film onto the base's pre-existing snout like this. Now hold it onto the mask for at least 1 minute until it's fully dried. Here's how it should look. Next, put a cut into the foam, then fold both halves over top each other like this. Then glue them together. You're also going to want to hold this for at least a minute. Once dried, cut off the extra foam on the side like this. Then add more glue and hold it once again. Once fully dried, try to round up the snout like this. Then cut the snout to the shape you want. Here's how it should look. Next, using 2 pieces of 6mm EVA film, cut them into circles and glue them onto the snout. Remember to cut off the edges of it so that they look more rounded. Here's how it should look. Off camera, I also added some more foam to the right side of the snout since it was a bit off-centered. Next, cut off the base's original snout and then glue the remaining parts onto the new snout like this. It should look something like this. Next, get a piece of 4mm EVA film and cut out a rectangle-shaped piece like this. Then glue it onto the bridge of the snout. Then cut out 2 triangle-shaped pieces and glue it onto the sides of the snout like this. Here's how it should look. Next, glue in some elastic. You may need a bigger or smaller piece depending on the shape of your head, so make sure to measure it out before you glue it on. Once dried, flip the elastic over the front of the mask since we're going to be lighting it. I'm using fleece, but you can use different materials like felt fabric. Here on the screen, I have a pattern how I glue it on. If you have trouble lighting masks, I recommend following it. Here's how it should look. Now just cut off the extra fabric, leaving a bit of a border. This will be important later. Here's how it should look. Now on that border we left, add evenly spaced cuts around the mask. It doesn't really matter where you add them. Next, glue those flaps down onto the mask. Be very careful with this step as it's very easy to burn yourself. If you're under 13, make sure to have adult supervision when using a hot glue gun. Anyways, here's how it should look. Next, using scissors, make similar cuts into the eyes just like we did with the lining. On the screen is a pattern on how we usually cut them. After that, glue the flaps down onto the mask. Now just do the same thing with the other eye. Here's how it should look. Next, get 2 pieces of 2mm EVA film and draw the shape of the ears onto them, then cut it out. Then flip the first ear over and trace it onto another piece of EVA film, then cut it out. Then glue both ears onto the mask. Here's how it should look. Next, we're making the nose. Glue some foam clay onto the snout, and then shape the nose how you want. I recommend sculpting it with a tool, but if you don't have one, the end of a paintbrush works just as well. Here's how it should look. Next, we're gluing on the fur. I'm using some wavy fur since I'm all out of my straight fur, but either works. Make sure the nose is fully dry before you glue on the fur. I actually made this mistake and you'll see what happens in a few minutes. Anyways, we're going to be gluing on the fur in strips. On the screen, I have a picture on where I glue it and in what order. First, you're going to want to start in the center by making a line of hot glue on the forehead, then add the fur on. Then you're going to glue it on strips like this. Make sure to pull and stretch your fur as you go as to prevent wrinkles. It's basically like felting a mask but with some extra steps. Also be sure to avoid the nose, as we're going to be dealing with that later. Now just do the same thing to the other side. Next, cut off the extra fur, leaving a border around the mask. Here's how it should look. Next, glue the fur onto the sides of the mask where you probably missed earlier. Then cut the fur that's in front of the ears and glue it behind them, if that makes sense. Now fully cut off that border from earlier. Next, cut off and glue down the extra fur around the nose like this. Since I didn't let it fully dry, it kinda got smushed, but we can just fix that later. Now we're cutting the fur. Starting on the snout, brush all the fur down and cut off the part that's hanging off like this. Here's how it should look. Next, starting in the middle, pull up the front sections and cut it at an angle, leaving it shorter towards the snout and longer towards the back of the mask. Now do this all the way around the mask. Here's how it should look. Next, flip the elastic over the mask and make cuts to the fur just like you do with the lining. Here's how it should look. Now just glue the fur down. Here's how it should look. Now pull the fur from the front of the mask with the eyes and cut it off. After that, put scissors through the eyes and cut the fur that's in front of them. Here's how it should look. Next, brush the fur in front of the eyes and cut out the part that's blocking them. Here's how it should look once finished. Next, we're gluing fur onto the ear. I'm starting with the back since the fur hat didn't fully cover it, but if yours did, you can just skip this step. Now cut off the extra fur, leaving a bit of a border. Next, glue some extra fur onto the inside of the ear. Then yet again, cut off the extra fur, leaving a bit of a border. After that, glue both the front and back pieces together. Here's how it should look. Once fully dried, cut the extra fur off. Here's how it should look. Next, on the back of the ear, brush all the fur to one side and cut off the fur that's hanging off. Now do this all the way around the rest of the ear. Here's how it should look. After that, using a pencil, separate the fur on the front of the ear. Then cut off the fur in the middle. Next, on the outer edge of the ear, brush all the fur to one side and cut off the extra. Then on the inner ear, pull it up and cut it at an angle, leaving it shorter towards the top of the ear and longer towards the bottom. Here's how it should look. Now just do the same thing with the other ear. Next, I'm fixing the nose. If you let the nose fully dry before adding your fur, you won't have to worry about it, but if you made the same mistake as me, just add more clay and sculpt it back into a nose shape. Next, for painting. Remember to have some fabric softener to mix with the paint so that it doesn't end up being crusty. Anyways, we're starting out with a light orange base. Just copy where I'm putting it. Then make a darker orange to add some details. After that, I'm mixing a lighter orange to add on the edge of the mask and forehead. Next, I'm making a brow to add some details around the nose and ears. Then make a reddish brown for the color for the inside of the ears. Next, make a really dark brown for the back of the ears. Make sure to leave a circle of it unpainted. Using that same really dark brown, give it some eyeliner. You don't have to do this part, but I accidentally painted over the white area with some orange, so I'm going back over it with some white paint. After that, I'm painting on the stripes and some other final details. I ended up losing a lot of the footage since my storage is full, so just copy how this looks. Anyways, here's how it should look once fully finished. Now just let it dry for at least 8 to 12 hours. I accidentally added Mod Podge to the nose off camera, but other than that, it's done. Here's how it should look. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like or even subscribe. I'm trying to reach 100k by 2026, and your support can make the difference. I also have all my socials linked in the description, so you should totally go check those out. Anyways, that's all. I'll see you guys later. Bye!